That was cool, Greg. I like that.
That was great.
Freaking metal, dude. That was cool.
I love it.
And I love clowns.
Oh, credit to, by the way, to Trent Reznor for the background music. That was Ghosts 4 or 1-4, I think. That guy has done a service to to the whole internet by basically opening his music to secondary use. So
that's awesome. You don't think anybody else is going to claim it? We constantly have someone else claiming stuff that we actually owned or something else. So it's like, that's ours. It's like, no, it's not.
Oh, no, his approach is always to get his music as far and wide as possible, and that means letting people reuse it. So
the worst thing I ever heard was a show that Lisa did with Clint Westwood, and he sang part of an AC/DC song, and they hit her.
They did.
Yes.
For Clint Westwood singing it. Yeah. I was like, really? Like, somebody needs to immediately sign him. He needs a record deal. If that's
by the way,
Sid, would never put the
related to that.
Trees. They were like, we don't want this digital stuff. We're not going for it. We're old men. Nah. No MP3s for us. Nah. They were the most anti-digital music, and they hit Lisa for Clint singing "Dirty Deeds Thunder."
Be careful! You're gonna get
my voice like this.
That's so hilarious, man. And by the way, screw Metallica and Lars. There's a bunch of pansies. Right. Anyway, so the intro to the intro. Welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable, episode 64, Politics and Blockchains. Hosts for today are Greg from Rivet, Lisa Mighty Davis, Litecoin, Lisa. I'm trying to, and then Satoshi Sean, entrepreneur and everyone's friend, and I'm Joe, master of ceremonies for this week and founder and architect of Dragon Chain. Quick update on the WBRT lot tokens distributed for last week's episode. So every host from last week will get 200 lot. Every topic contributor will get 30 lot. By the way, thanks you guys for doing that, because I was out and unavailable, and I think it was just two of you, right?
Yep.
Pretty sure. Okay. Yeah. I think Sean maybe showed up
for the very end.
Through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so not awesome. The very end, but like halfway through.
Perfect. Ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and most importantly, governance votes. Speaking of which, there is a WBRT DAO suggestion up. It's not a vote yet. So please propose some themes for the September shows. It will be due next Monday at 1600 UTC. Go in there and reply and make a suggestion. I had some I needed to make. I can't remember what they were, though, so I need to think that through. The theme of the week is politics and blockchain, nominated by denizen Elon Tusk. And it's basically anything politics then, right? So it's a fair game, all open. Right, guys, it should be fun.
Lovely category, actually.
So, do we have any current events in politics?
Yeah, we do.
The
OFAC blacklisting of Tornado Cash is a huge one, I would say.
I need to know more about that. I don't know enough about it because I haven't had time to.
The rough idea is OFAC is supposed to be publishing a blacklist of foreign nationals, people, it says in the law. Who are supposed to be deprived of the benefit of the U.S. Financial system and economy. So what it does in practice is it outlaws all U.S. persons from interacting with the blacklisted parties' bank accounts, the blacklisted parties' whatevers, but it's meant to sanction a person, right? Well, in this case, they've done something weird, and they've taken and blacklisted a smart contract, which is not a person, and it's had the effect essentially of banning every U.S. person from using a software utility. So there are censorship implications, there are privacy implications because the service happens to be a privacy service, and there are free speech implications as well because we already have. Supreme Court precedent saying that open source code is speech.
That's free speech.
So it's
First Amendment
quite the hairy deal.
And I think I can't remember if it was before that the Supreme Court. I can't remember what year that was, but I remember when they had the Linux driver for either DVD. I think it was CD, but one way or another, where they were region matched, so you couldn't watch a DVD from Britain in the U.S. and that type of stupidity. Right. That they had something on there where someone reverse engineered bad security tech in one of the, I can't remember which drive, that had the issue where the key was exposed. They reverse engineered the whole thing and effectively said, okay, now if you're running Linux, you can watch something from a region. And I think it was DVD, but maybe it was CD. Yeah. And then they became illegal. And so they went after it. And the goal for all of the open source community at the time, it was a great time, and it felt like early crypto days. The crypto has totally lost that, but one way or another, everyone got together and just started sharing that library everywhere. So there's there's no way you could stop it, and it just kind of just went away, right? That all the industry trying to kill it. So maybe that needs to be happening now too, that whatever that smart contract is, or
to a certain degree, like one of the weird things about it is our competitors, the Rivet's competitors, biggest ones, Alchemy and Infura, immediately and without any preemption by any, as far as I know, any outside input, decided that they were going to blacklist these addresses as well. Presumably because they think that publishing an uncensored version of the blockchain is somehow interacting with these addresses. And we dispute that interpretation. We think that an uncensored publication that is essentially right now implemented as efficiently as possible from a technical standpoint, doesn't need the inefficiencies of individual address censorship. And, we think that it's an unconstitutional taking of engineering resources if they expect us to build a censorship mechanism into what would otherwise be, a symphony of mathematical harmony in the publication of a big freaking database.
That's amazing. Because as a technologist, we could look at it from one angle that interestingly, right? If you're and I don't know enough about the implementation of Ethereum miners, but if your miner has to go from scratch and rebuild the chain to today, right? Which typically you download something that theoretically, I believe, I don't know this, that the actual version of software would be run on every transaction, including smart contracts. So you would potentially be running that smart contract, or are you just pulling in the IO from every input, every output? So you're not actually running it, but you're recording it. In which case, the weird thing is, and this is something I contend, I think that they are really after with blockchain, is history. And whether that is history of a financial transaction or of a smart contract execution, that is actual history. And we have a real tool now to measure whether Herodotus was full of it when he wrote about some battle, because it was 200 years before he lived. That it would be an amazing thing if you could go back and see the raw evidence with you think about that and what that means for today, because unlike the past, they can't then alter history.
Right. Well, right? And we're a small team, right? So, when we take resources off one thing and put them on another, we sacrifice a lot, and we have a limited runway to get to a place where we see us as competitive in the market. And I think that the only reason that Alchemy and Infura are so compliant with this is because it's to their advantage if companies like us are regulated out of existence.
Yeah. They did the same thing. I don't know if you guys remember, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And so when I went to an event, and it really pissed me off, because our senator was up there talking about how they needed to get rid of the whatever they called the hands-off internet sales tax thing, right? That all of the Congress was pushing for it back then. And I'm like, no, this is an opportunity for, small, poor states, for small businesses to project power that I can do things that nobody else can, and I'm not going to pay that tax for New York just because somebody, that would be a ridiculous cost of doing business if I want to sell across state lines. And it was really funny because he was saying we need to get rid of that, and he brought up some local small business up there to say, yeah, tax me. It was ridiculous. And that was the point when I actually got to shake Manchin's hand and tell him, I need to talk to you about Bitcoin, right? And he froze, right? And he obviously had heard about it in the past because he was on the banking committee then, and he froze, and he looked up and he found one of his aides and he told him to come over, right? And it was funny. I did get to talk to him. I don't know that they ever agreed, but they at least played nice.
Had to hear you, right?
Yeah, but it was really funny because at that time, all the small businesses that were typically going through Amazon or eBay or something else to sell stuff across, right? That you would think Amazon would be against that because it would be very. What did they do though? They got paid off or something happened and they flipped and they basically said, oh, we can essentially put together, we can afford to do it. Whereas all these small businesses can't do crap about it. There's the deal. And it was an advantage to them to do it. And so they backed it and there was nothing to block it. So it happened. Right. It's crazy.
Well, ultimately what it comes down to is we see ourselves as publishers. And if they want to contend that OFAC can reach into the First Amendment and abridge it for this purpose, then they need to come at us that way. And we're perfectly happy to talk with them about it. But
so then that the Section 230 argument?
Yeah, it is actually.
Okay.
Wow.
This is a case. This is a case where Section 230 should protect publishers of information.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, and it is. Yeah, it's you're a publisher. It's great.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, because
I see things that are supposed to protect us, and on all of the foundations for how we've lived for generations, they're not there anymore.
It's true.
I've said for a long time that I think the only branch of government that works is the judicial.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So many don't have access to counsel because of the cost. I practice law. They're welcome to. They're welcome to.
You think judicial works?
You've hit a nail. You've hit a nerve because my niece is poor.
2 years in on.
And her mom and dad are poor, and she is being abused,
harassed
by the government, and she needs a lawyer. It's $2,500 and they can't afford it. $1,500 to put down to get it, and either Uncle Sean pays or it goes on.
Or she could lose her family.
She could lose her kids. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's you hit such a nerve, Greg. So a friend of mine, good friend of mine, his girlfriend is a supervisor with CPS, who's my niece who had her baby had a heart attack when pregnant had a heart attack. So the hospital calls CPS because it's a 1-year-old has a heart attack, and it could happen from being shook. But then a week later they figure out he has meningitis and blah blah blah. But CPS is involved; they're entrenched. So she has to take a drug test. She has to go through all this stuff. They don't close the case, which I know they don't do, because if they close a case, they have to start working a new one, and they're government workers, which they don't like to do that. So they like to leave it open for the full amount of time, which I knew they were going to do that. But then they investigated her, and they pulled her juvenile records from Florida, a whole nother state, and then they told her, "Well, you had a case when you were 12." You're involved in Florida with your dad. And she's like, yeah, that's why I'm in Texas. My mom had to call the police and they had to investigate, bring me back to Texas.
She did nothing wrong. She was a victim in that.
Right. And they said, well, you were abused when you were 12, so you might abuse your kids. So your case
Holy shit.
That's such bullshit.
And then I called my friend and I talked to his girlfriend, and it was the hardest conversation I've had because she was so government, and it was that tyranny of help. No, they just wanted to have the tools. And I'm like, they're saying she has to go to forced counseling. She has to do these other things that are forced on her because it's something that happened when she was 12 that she's dealt with, that they're bringing up, that she now has to talk about with her fiance. I don't know if he told
she's essentially being re-victimized.
Yes, and being shamed for being a victim. This, and she went to the lawyer, and the lawyer said, "Oh, I'll get this closed today. I'll just call them. I'll tell them they have to close it. They're victim shaming you. They're doing this. They shouldn't have done this. They went to investigate you when there was no reason to." And my friend's girlfriend's like, "Yeah, but we had this one family. We were working with them for like 8 months, and then come to find out, we had to take the kids because they're all meth addicts, and we're having to deal with that. And then we found out that she lost 3 kids in Illinois because she was a meth addict." And I'm like, you're trying to justify a completely different thing.
Right. Another case. Hello.
Then that was ruled out because it was meningitis. I said they've already done everything. They shouldn't go looking to make the case longer. Anyway, the whole time was just like, oh, we just want to help and just want to do what's best for her. And nobody wants to do anything bad. And she actually said, "Hey, Sean, this isn't your grandpa's CBS. This is a whole new. We just want to help people. We don't want to take people's kids, and we don't want to do bad things. We just want to help." And I was like, I just heard Bush.
Well, then maybe stop doing it.
Hitler machine gun. You know what I mean? It was.
Well, if there's anybody who's licensed in that state listening, reach out to Sean. They could use some pro bono help.
Well, man. Okay. By the way, speaking of politics and blockchain, I think one thing needs to be said, and this is something I've just adopted because I've worked as a contractor in government. I've worked outside. I know there are a lot of good people inside of government, even bureaucrats.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, anyone who is currently in a state or federal, especially federal position as a bureaucrat at any level, unless you are a freaking mole like a Mr. Incredible who is basically giving the secrets out to the people who are being abused, they should be publicly shamed. Every single one of them, because that is the only thing that enables the bullshit that we're seeing right now across the board. Whether it's the cops, whether it's the agents, anybody, whether it's the person sitting at a desk answering a goddamn phone, if you're doing that, shame on you. You're a horrible human being unless you're trying to get out, because most of those people are being paid 20 to 60% higher than their equivalent qualifications in the private sector, number one. So they're overpaid on our backs, on top of all the other BS that's going on. And most of them are there because it's the guaranteed job. They can fuck off all day long. They can be lazy as hell. They can get shit done. And when somebody comes in and like us and threatens, is like, "Oh, you're saying I'm a bad person. You're going to get this. You're going to get that. You're going to get screwed across the board. You should have seen the shit that they did to us in Washington State. We're no longer there. And they're continuing to try to do, even though the company's not there anymore. It's bullshit.
Anyway. That's interesting to me. Like, because the funny thing about being inside a government agency, and I worked with one for a while, is the people who are really doing the work are legitimately committed to serving the public. Like the problem is the machine, pushes them to behaviors that are destructive, and they don't see the destruction. Right. They don't realize that the good that's in their hearts is being used to drive energetic.
I'm an upstanding member of the community. Do you know who I am? It'll come
stepping
up, right?
on people's rights. Right. Yeah.
Well, they think they're doing good, and they really believe they're doing good, and that's the problem.
I once went to a neighbor's house.
They're doing good. I think power corrupts, and they've been given a little bit of power, whatever power they have. I think that they get a swelled head and they want to use the power.
I'll tell you, I had a neighbor who, he was an FBI agent. He was a great guy, super nice. They screwed the entire neighborhood by selling their market undervalued because guess what? The government picks up the tab. They made the money that they made. They didn't have to worry about it. But then the government sold it through some other entity that sold it 20, 30% below value, screwing the entire neighborhood's home prices. But beyond that, That just came with the job, I guess. They get that perk. Wouldn't that be a nice perk? It's like, hey, Sean, we want you to move up here. We're going to pay for every damn thing. It's like, oh, the house won't sell. I can't buy it. It's like, we'll take care of it. Here's 20% more than market. We don't give a shit with the neighborhood. We'll sell it 20 or 30 under market and just unload it. And guess what? We'll write that off and then charge the government. Fine. Anyway, beyond that, I go over to his house because they said, hey, come over, Joe. And they're drinking, had cigars. And he had a friend over who was another agent. And they're talking about all the really weird interpolitics stuff that you're like, oh, that's strange. That they every one of them, in order to progress in their career, has to go through the sex crime stuff, has to go through the, whatever, the different types of crime and the different division offices. They have to move effectively.
Like Masons going through their different degrees.
But they know what it is. It's like some stuff that's not, you couldn't look it up, but they know everybody knows the process. And so they're talking about that stuff. And at one point they start telling some stories of some of the things that they've been on. And it's like, okay, it's interesting stuff always. And you're like, that's crazy, picking up, arresting some bad guy, whatever. But then he appeared, the guy that wasn't my neighbor, that was in from DC, guess what? He talks about how he was on some drug crime task force or something, and he was rolling through some neighborhood of a friend, and he looked over and he's like, holy shit, that guy's got a Ferrari and he's got a free, I don't know what, some fancy cars, right? He had some nice cars in the driveway. He's like, holy shit, that's nice. And so while he's there with his friend, he says, it's like, oh, that's a black guy. And I'm not kidding you. He tells me, he's like, oh, that's a black guy. So he calls it in. So he ran this dude's plates because he had all these fancy cars, but he was black. And so he goes through this, and he's like, oh, and then he was, and I can't remember who it was, right? Somebody out there who was turns out it was an NFL player. It's like, oh, so it's okay. He has fancy cars, but he's black, but he's in it.
If he'd been a nondescript business owner, the question
exactly. If he would have been an entrepreneur and a startup, that happened to be black and had some nice cars, he would have been investigated.
Right. You think about that. It reminds me of the Joker, right? Like talking in Dark Knight when he was saying the bit about it being part of the plan. It's part of the plan for people to get shot in war zones or to be shot in low income neighborhoods. But if you try to shoot one little mayor, the whole system goes bananas, right? Like, oh, an NFL player, that's okay because it's a modern day minstrel show, but we're going to come after you if you made your money in business because
Greg, you keep hitting nerves, man. It's really weird. I look at the world so differently than other people. The movie The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was so taken aback. We watched it for family night, and then everyone loved the movie, and then I said something about him being an anti-hero. It's like, hey, he's such an anti-hero. It's one of the best anti-heroes. And my kids looked at me like, what? It's like, he's an anti-hero, man. All society has done this and created him as a monster. And he's just, they're like, he's a fucking psychopath, Dad. He's the villain. He's the biggest villain in the world. Like, no, in the movie, he's like a hero. Because, he just, look at what he's doing. He's like an example of how in the whole dialogue. And they're like, you're crazy, Dad. Literally, we're
but
worried.
He was driven under positive motive.
I'm like, you didn't really? He was on the game or the talk show, and he's like, blah blah blah. And like everyone beat him down, and he just stood up for himself. In a way, he just went crazy, and his mom abused him. And they're like.
But he was trying to live his life and be good, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And it was that attempt to be good that ultimately won him the ire, right? So
I would even say he's approaching an actual hero, oddly enough. Right. And the funny thing is, I mean, I by the way, that movie is amazing. The whole twist, that my assumption is that. I believe now from that whole thing that he literally is Batman's brother. and that he's crazy enough that he's never going to. It's like, that is the most beautiful
created, just like falling down
cop doing that terrible thing and investigating the guy because he was black and all that. That is like Joker evil, but it's all behind the scenes and quiet, so that's acceptable. The Joker was just like, hey, all this evil that everyone does, here it is, just out in the open. And they're like, oh, that's terrible, you can't do that. But
and that's what they're doing right now in real life.
Beautiful. So your kids are so is it with that, maybe with that generation, that it is the perception is that, oh, well, you can't talk about it? Because I wonder, the doublethink thing is rampant. Literally, you look at identity politics. I identify as a X, whatever, whether it's gender or even race now. I identify as an attack helicopter. That whole thing is the doublethink thing that is so
it is.
So
it's
nuts.
weird, but it's a weird. Like, it's okay to beat someone down or do something that's terrible, but it's really, really offensive to misgender someone or to not care.
My pronouns are curly and shuffle.
Like, I don't care about your gender. I'm not going to be. But what we've lost is what that intent is important. Intent is the difference between a racial joke and a racist joke. Intent is the most important thing, I think. Intent is what makes things bad. You can call, your best friend a son of a bitch, or you can call him a son of a bitch, and you're going to have to fight. It's the same thing. It's all about intent. And
that's a great point. I have had so my daughter's black. My youngest daughter is black, but people meet me and don't know that, and so I have said things in conversations that if I was black, I wouldn't have been judged for. But they don't know that and then once they find out I have a black daughter, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Weird, right?
It's
a very strange
way of thinking that they think is so strange.
It's, if you look at some of the early stuff from, what's his name in Canada? Who's the freaking site guy in Canada that I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Peter. Some of his early stuff was about language in Canada, and they were trying to make stuff illegal. A lot of that's very valuable to look at because it's like, it's a word. In my opinion, it's a word. And, I don't say stuff that, with it all, willingly would want to offend certain, except for evil people, right? But
I mean, going back to, I guess, Sean's point about intent. What the intent is. So, like, if you're coming
but
from
even if I intend to, here's the thing: if I intend to hurt your feelings and call you something, it doesn't matter. I mean, I might be a bad person, and then you can all judge me for having done that, and you can choose to not be offended by a stupid word, right? That's the thing that it should be. I mean, you could call me all sorts of names, and most of them I will not take offense to. Some of them, if you call me a fraud or something, it'll not that I'll take offense, but I'll have to prove you wrong, right? That type of thing.
I'll be honest with you guys, and this is offensive. It's offensive. I'll admit that. But my kids they still bring it up, but it's true and it is offensive. See, I'm about to say it's wrong, but I don't know if it's wrong. But okay. So years ago, if I had to call Walmart or a store, and you guys are technologists, like you said. So back in the early days of like PCs, 286, 386, these days.
Right, yeah.
If I had to, or for TV stuff, if I had to call Walmart and I asked for the electronics department and I got a girl, I would not talk to her. I would say, can I talk to a man? Because every time.
Really?
What
year were you born?
No,
that much older than me.
Every time I go round and round, I'm trying to explain it, and it takes like 15, 20 minutes. And they end up having to ask someone, and I don't know who I'm talking to on the phone. I don't care. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings and say, hey, you stupid broad. No, I'm not doing that. Okay, but I always have to talk to a guy. So I'm just like, hey, is John there? Whoever. You mean Bill? Yeah, Bill. Can I talk to Bill? And my kids are like, God, that's so sexist. And I'm like, look, man, I need to get this.
That could be more of like a communication style in your defense.
Yeah.
Because women do communicate differently than men, more than an education
we're
thing.
Well, I mean,
You're
it was
saying-
1992, right?
This is back
Yes.
when technology was like brand
So
new.
you are
That's like-
saying that you
By
believed
20
women were less intelligent.
They weren't trained. They weren't trained. It
weren't
was not
trained.
a video
They're,
game.
they're far less likely to be computer geeks,
20
which was
years
the only
ago-
way you could get an expert.
20
at
years
that
ago,
time.
maybe with gaming, we got what 2-3% female. 20 years
Yeah.
ago, come on, if that's the way
Yeah.
it was. So back then,
Okay.
it's and now completely different. And I don't ask for women
Okay.
because there
You guys ready?
Yeah.
We went long on it. It's 31 minutes in. We're good.
No,
We could go.
We have to talk about.
We have to talk about more current events, but I'm sure they're asked, right? This is about politics.
That's about
We should at
politics,
least
yeah.
we should see some of the questions.
Anyone else
and
have Wang Chung stuck in their head all week from this?
Thankfully, no. Now, did
Bastard. Now I do.
Woohoo. Yeah.
do we? I only know one song of theirs, so it makes it easy. By the way, do we? How do we want to do this? Let's see here. Well, okay, we can start with some of these, and then we can break through. Because somebody quickly give me before we go into questions. What are the top things we need to talk about? Probably the Trump raid, Mar-a-Lago raid, whatever you want to call it. Probably.
I think the dismantling of the FBI, the
The
list that the FBI put of people that are terrorists, and the qualifications of what a domestic terrorist is. Have y'all
Okay.
seen
All
that
right.
list?
we should probably also talk about the passage of the Inflation Enhancement Act.
Yes, 3. Okay, so
Yeah,
we need to get to
it
those.
was reduction.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just
All
wanted
right.
to make sure everyone caught the joke, man. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll get through maybe we can interleave, right? Okay. So Bit by the Coin asks, how do you see DAOs making an impact in politics? This is an excellent question, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think,
Well,
we had a great discussion of that, 2 weeks ago when we talked about using DAOs for city states.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think they would, really cause a lot of truth and help remove that middleman of the lobbyist and all that,
Yeah.
buying people off and all that.
I
The
think
Modern
that's something
Business
that everybody
Association-
loses sight of. Everybody on everything that we always talk about is there is a stage of fight. There is a stage of fighting. I don't think that people in politics and institutions and just the evil side is going to allow this to just happen. They're going to fight it tooth and nail. I think that these things are amazing and everything that everyone says is true about how they're going to fix things. But people in power don't want these things fixed. So we have to go through that stage and prepare for that stage and prepare for all the negative stuff in order to put these things in place and get people excited and understanding why it's so important. And like with the legalization of marijuana and stuff, to make these people see, I'm going to lose what power I have if I don't start backing this.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a freedom of association issue at its core, right? Is what it really comes down to. The early, and it sort of rubs up against business association law, which is the law that allows for the corporation or the LLC or the general partnership to exist. If you don't file any documents and you start a business together with anyone, you create what's called a general partnership. And it's a bad situation to keep yourself in for very long because it allows for personal liability, right? So your business goes under, your creditors can come for your house. That's why most people form LLCs or corporations to begin with, right? But to this point, up until DAOs were created, you needed a centralized intermediary in order to even organize that business. So the DAO is a competing extra governmental association mechanism that right now would be treated as a general partnership if you were to sue anybody in court, but it can be so dramatically decentralized that the law starts to break down, because joint and several liability across thousands of parties is just impracticable, right? You can't sue a DAO and expect to be able to get all of the participants into court if it's a big DAO, right? They just won't fit in the room for starters. But then there's all the service and notice things that would be complete. Like, how are you supposed to do 3-day notice if you got to mail 1,000 letters? For example, that is a problem that has to be solved if we're going to integrate DAOs into the current structure.
Or like certified mail, it has to be signed for it in the time
Well,
period.
Well, there's my thing, because I think the power of the DAO is that among those things of protection, I'm sure I've not considered too much, but the fact that it is an entirely different universe. It's like a parallel universe where the laws theoretically should be the code itself. Everybody's agreed to it. In fact, we have better signature proof than and time proof of when the signature happened than any other way. And if it's anonymous, then it's really good. And if it's actually decentralized, it's really good. The powers of the keys.
The problem emerges when you start trying to bolt government onto it, right? Because technically DAOs are taking care of the administrative and publication function of creating this entity in the public eye, right?
Yeah.
You can see it on the blockchain. Why do you need a separate registry?
Right. And why do we need to plug it in? I mean, yes, if there's like, oh, I want to sue you over here. And it's like, well, guess what? This isn't over there. There's this value that is here that might not, by the way, because I like looking at DAOs that are not effectively trading clubs, because that's what a lot of DAOs are. And the assumption is, oh, we have this pot of money here and we're going to buy and sell this stuff, and the DAO is going to decide that. And like, really, come on. That's kind of a boring use of a DAO, I think. But either way,
but it's also like 90% of what people want to use it for, right? So
right now, well, it's 90% of what Ethereum maximalists want to use it for. Yes, right. That's what all of them are doing.
It is the most practical present day use case, I guess.
I think it's the most interested in by crypto Twitter and the people that care about crypto right now. Like normies don't understand DAOs at all. We've tried to talk to you know this too, because you would probably be the lead of it, that we're hoping to set up something for a voter, get essentially a DAO PAC that would get voting on chain and would go out and basically support candidates. It's a PAC that supports candidates that would push on-chain voting, right? And what we like to in voter fraud and all the rest of it. And we talked to some people in that space, and they had no clue whatsoever where we were going with it or why or how it could actually help them, right?
Right.
So
it can be used to organize anything. It can be used to organize a church community. It can be used to organize a political community. It can be used to organize a governmental unit. It can be used to organize road contractors in a private road system. I mean, for whatever you wanted to do with it, it can adapt. The question is, what do political structures that exist today have to say about it? Because they have these little fiefdoms, right? And
and that's why I say I think that needs to start being ignored, because it's like when there is a reason, there'll be a reason, but in the front of it is like, oh, we have to get ahead of this. It's like, really, you don't even understand it.
Like,
why would you want to get ahead of it?
Legislate all of society around it, or you can just let it be and deprecate the old structures.
Yeah, and that probably is why. It's just power. It's the same thing we talked about earlier. It's like, oh, you aren't of a sufficient caste and societal value to be running that organization or to have that amount of input in something that can do X, which affects my job.
Right, like the character test that you have to do before you can establish a banking charter, for example, is one of those. Like they're literally going to discriminate against you if you don't come from a certain background.
I just had kind of a realization. And what is it? Crypto Tommy said something. We're becoming a society that wants our polarized feelings not to be hurt on anything. Feelings never trump dialogue. I always said, and I've said since I was a child, that America was founded on being offended. It was literally people that came over and said, hey, my government is offended by how I worship God, how I do whatever. Come here. This is a country. Come here, and you can be as offensive as you want. Just don't harm anyone or infringe on anyone.
Right, and nobody's going to be required to interact with you.
And that's the way that was great. And it sticks and stones and breaking your bones, the names over all that. This is what we're made for. But what I've said, and I just got hit in the face by what you just said. We came from this caste system, which we completely shed as what I've seen it shed. It's back, and to talk to my friends in like Europe and especially Britain, their way of thinking is just so odd. Like they're completely intelligent people, and then they'll say something like that Martini guy did a video and he said, in America, everyone's vote counts the same. How crazy. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I was like,
it counts for
Jordan, did you just say that? But it's a way of thinking. And there are classes now.
It counts equally zero.
If you're gay, you can't say anything. You can't talk about that. You could say that about this. You used to be able to like make fun of fat people or Asians, and then you can't do that. But not this race or not that race. And everything's become like a class, and you're protected on this.
No, now they're beautiful, and there's big models at Target, oversized.
Did you guys see Bill
girl
Maher?
that's actually pretty is a selfish.
Well, you can't.
Whatever.
Fine, that's subjective.
Did you see Bill Maher talking
Subjective,
about it?
fine.
It's healthy.
A girl that's healthy or fit is
I'm not
considered.
healthy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, they can shame you now for being in shape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, also if
because
if you're a fat person who disagrees with that and says, "Hey man, it's not healthy. Really, I should lose weight. We should." Then like, oh, you're like an Uncle Tom of fat. It's insanity.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what that means?
They used to call that working for the American Heart Association.
Everything doesn't make sense, but I think we need this new class system where it's like, okay, regular people can't make fun of you or say anything, but the police are going to give you a hard time. It's like a trade-off, It's insane, but I think we've created a whole new class system of people being either protected or allowed to be attacked.
Right. Well, I mean, it's to a certain degree, it's also an act of self-destruction, right? Like, if you set the bar such that there's no such thing as good self-improvement, right? Like, what are we doing to ourselves? And that is how a society tears itself apart. We all have to be
signaling with their diapers on their face
to work on ourselves. And I mean, if we forgive it with with some kind of notion of a right to not be offended, like, what are we doing to ourselves as a society? We are setting ourselves to decline into the world from WALL-E, right?
And by the way,
everybody's in a hover chair.
By the way, speaking of blockchain and speaking of history, I even think that the entire notion that, we are becoming a society that wants polarized feelings to be heard, putting it on us, is like, that's placed there on purpose. They're training all the kids to be offended at every fucking thing they hear, and they can't have these, it should, by the way, be Uncle Two-Ton Tommy. That should be what it's called, right? But either way, it's like they want this to happen. They want to pit people against each other, and it's like and I said this before, they're gonna get to earlobes, and I don't know if mine are attached or separate, but they're gonna get to a point where we are fighting each other because of which kind of earlobes we have.
Joe, I feel like it has to be Tommy Two-Ton.
Tommy Uncle Tommy Two-Ton. See, there you go.
It's made our kids so much weaker,
Yes.
People believe what you tell them.
That's the point.
People believe.
Have you seen, by the way, it's a very controversial video, and the guy at the very beginning, and I'm not going to link it or anything else. I've seen it on 4chan poll, where all my friends are most of the time, right? But anyway, that it's this guy who's talking, and he's talking about, it's like, look, this is controversial to say, but if I want to weaken a society, what am I going to do? I'm going to start making sure that their kids are eating crap. They're not healthy.
Oh, exactly.
They're lazy.
I'm going
to teach them to hate their history. I'm going to teach them that their country, their nation, their people, whatever it is, even if it's a mix, that they are evil and their past is horrible. I'm going to separate them. I'm going to divide them. And he goes through a whole series, and you're like, holy shit, this is probably filmed in the 70s or 80s. And
that's why Rockefeller did that with our with our education system.
Right. Oh yeah.
They paraded around a little woman and told people, this is who's going to be in charge of public education. And then instead, he became in charge of it. And there's some famous quote that he made about, like, give me your one generation of children or something. He wanted that more than anything.
Right. You see, the original quote ended with something about how we want them to be, to educate them to be satisfied with their narrow horizons.
Wow.
And that was the founding idea behind it, and that was actually the founding idea behind compulsory education.
We used to educate kids about what their rights were and how empowered they were as an American, and that backfired on the powers that be when we had television.
When did they do that?
Everyone saw what happened to black people in the South because it was on TV, and then white people said, hey, that's wrong. And they joined with the black people, and the government said, oh, shit. And then they passed civil rights. And all this happened because people knew what their rights were, and people saw an injustice, and they knew that they were empowered to fix it, and they did. So they stopped teaching civics, where people learn that, and they actually teach government. They changed it from civics to...
Yeah, you're right.
It's so transparent. And I think that people now are taught not that you are empowered to fix what's wrong, but like you said, to hate your history. If you don't like what has happened, make sure it doesn't happen again. Oh no, we don't want that. If you can see what's happened and you don't like what has happened, you can fix what you don't like. But
right, and it's not so much hating your history as it is self-loathing.
Yeah, and that's what's taught now.
Yeah, or totally being taught an inaccurate or a history where there are a lot of pieces missing.
Well, they leave out the parts where people actually banded together and made a difference, right? That's the part they don't want you to think about, because they want you to feel like all of the efforts were in vain and that there's nothing to be done. But to submit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
And to just bring back to DAOs real quick, right? That's how DAOs break this system.
Yes.
Their direct action.
And they would clean up that voting thing.
And real history. Yeah. The fact that you have a measurable, independently provable history. Okay. Jacob Wayne, I have a calm question. When will America wake up and use blockchain for voting systems?
They don't
want it.
I gotta jump in here and say I hope that when they do that they use it at polling places, because I don't think that you can use it as a way to do digital voting broadly and still have secure ballots, right? Ultimately, it's the fact that you have to show up in person and at one point in time, at least, identify yourself as a U.S. citizen to another person that makes it so that we can ensure that 90% of the votes aren't coming from a VPN server in Ohio, right? Pretending to be from the United States. We can't necessarily trust that the entire internet infrastructure is going to be.
But there are pieces that could be blockchained, like the actual pieces of paper, which may have been or may not have been.
You could use a blockchain local to the polling place, and it would make tabulation more fair. But you can't give it to people's smartphones yet. We don't have the ability to record
like this is like with the other stuff I said, that there's an underlying problem that we don't address first, and that's that America needs to wake up, the world needs to wake up at what blockchain is and is capable of.
Yes.
That, until they know that, they're not gonna see a voting system on it. They're not. It's like, it's like. I hark back to that meme I saw the other week, where it's an anti-electricity meme from when they were trying to put electricity in the United States. People didn't know what it was, so they didn't know what it could be. And then when whoever it was that figured a binary system can travel on an electric current because it's only on and off, that was like they had to understand what electricity was first before they could do that. Which
the early metaphors were fluid metaphors, right? They wanted you to think of it like plumbing.
Yeah.
So if things like the Proton Mail deleting like Coin Vigilante's account, and I think we talked about this last week, Greg, where, Bitcoin originally had a message. That first Bitcoin sent had that message on it, and is protected. It is speech. It is language. And so if people learned that part about it, instead of number go up about Bitcoin, then wow, would it have the value? People really would see. And if we lose our freedom of speech, where even things like Proton Mail are deleting people's, you guys were talking about them shutting people's bank accounts down. There's censorship all over the place now. And if Bitcoin is the only way we can speak freely, maybe that's when people learn that.
That's a good point, Lisa. I think they're terrified a bit of blockchain in the sense that that there are strong constitutional protections for money as speech, right? And if money isn't controllable, then it's truly free speech that is already pre-protected, right? And that terrifies them a bit, I imagine.
Yeah, well, and that's why I say, though, it's so out there, but I do say that the banks originally went after Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin. Now Bitcoin is not that anymore. Imagine that. It's an odd development, isn't it? It's like Bitcoin isn't cash anymore. It's this. It's not what it was made for. It's this. And the VCs went after the ICOs. I think that the powers that be, the real power in the world, doesn't want the history components there. Yeah. They're going to try to kill every. It's like, it's the power is that's not green. It's horrible that Bitcoin uses so much power. It's like that's how you can measure the proof, right? It's ridiculous.
Right, exactly. And what they're really terrified about is the immutability, honestly.
Yes.
When it really comes down to the fact that there's no erase and replace function.
Right. And that's history. This is really what was put here then. And, whether we can measure that it happened within a 10-minute window of time or longer.
You can override it with a later entry, but you can't replace an old entry.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's literal history. And what they're going to try to do is ban history, which guess what? They've done it already in the past. So they know they can try to do it again. But with voting, I would both agree and disagree with you, Greg, that the easiest is obviously in poll, but it would also be the biggest problem, frankly, is identity. Because if we can get a good enough standard for identity to say, look, I can look at any person and I can see that they've registered, they've proven through some authority that I trust that they live in the district, so on, so on, so on, that those things are, and it would require this third party to cheat, which is still very possible.
But a lot of the injustice in our society, though, are the true injustice. The ones we never talk about come from things like not forgiving people who served their time, or not truly forgiving people who filed for bankruptcy. A lot of injustice is done there. So we have an identity system that cannot be washed clean.
That's what I'm saying. That's why, in my opinion, it has to be. It would be much better if we had a way. And by we've been working on this with different parties, and it's a very abstract thing. But where you can both plug in a big third party, like a bank level KYC. So some people trust that. Other other people don't, depending on the situation like this. The other side would be the fact that all of us could verify, yes, we all met Greg in person, let's say, and we'd say, okay, Greg is obviously taller than this, shorter than this, or that Greg is obviously over 18, those things. And because I've also met with 1,000 other people who have all willingly said with their keys, I met Joe. Here's some evidence that I met him. Here's a picture. And by the way, it's tied to a picture where Joe sent it, and we both signed it with the keys that are known as owned by both of us. And now we're saying that Joe has shown other evidence that he lives in this district, whatever else there is.
His earlobes are attached.
And now when I vote with my keys, even theoretically, if I didn't go into a kiosk, if I did it on a phone, you could still say, that's Joe. And it's because you would have a massive key signing party that would have biometrics attached with the protection, privacy of various elements, that I have to expose maybe my address to vote, or maybe, you know, some portion of my address to vote. I have to, anybody who audits the vote could pull and see that data that I don't know that this is Joe's key.
Or you have to
but I know this
privately that you have not voted anywhere else and that you are a
yes.
citizen. Right?
Yes.
Those two pieces of information can be passed without necessarily passing the underlying proof.
Exactly. And if I wanted, and I would then also be able to see that my vote was cast the way I intended, right? So I'd be able to look at it and prove to myself the same thing. Nobody else could prove that was me, so you still have secret ballot, but everybody be able to, like that,
but
count the damn vote.
Unfortunately, that means accepting a lot of, like I'm saying, the punitive infrastructure around fresh starts. Like, I believe personally that people should be able to, screw up, atone, and start fresh. And we
I think it's a different issue, though, right?
I think it's intrinsically tied, right? You can't say that you have to have an identity system when identity is the mechanism by which the past is forced upon you.
Well, there's good to that too, because
is it totally good, or should we let people
y'all were talking about earlier? Have y'all seen what the World Economic Forum put out?
No.
I'm trying to share my screen.
Here, let's get it up there. Here we go. You got okay.
It's proof of work versus proof of
Cole.
Look at the reward that the miner gets. He's wearing a mask.
That graph is fucking propaganda, man. That is so propaganda.
This is put out by the World Economic Forum. You know who tweeted it? Executive Director of the Ethereum Foundation.
Yeah, go fucking. I'm surprised they didn't put an angel halo over the guy on the right.
Yeah.
No, the guy on the right would be using fiat, Greg. If they're going to put a halo, it's going to be on somebody who's not mining Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Proof of stake guy should have a little halo over his head. By the way, this graphic looks.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think they're not showing the far right side, where the other miners actually mining gold somewhere in South Africa with slaves, and they're going to have a little bit to get fiat.
Exactly. There needs to be like a fiat version of this graphic that includes smelters.
God, and guns,
right, and a map of all the bank branches out there.
The dude behind, I'm not going to say anything else about the dude behind the machine at the Fed, but he's going to have a halo, but he's going to be directing warships.
Wait, can we? Who's Sean? Is this you screen sharing right now?
Yeah.
Oh,
can you pull up a map and just search for local bank branches and just show how many of those are around there? Because it's a useful juxtaposition to the notion.
Oh, I don't think he wants to dox where he is, though.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But in any case,
we can pick a random spot anywhere in the U.S. Pick the center of the United States. What is it west of Salina, Kansas? I've been through there.
I'm gonna do bank branches in Denver.
Okay, all right.
And I'm pull up maps here. Okay.
None of us are in Denver, by the way. So
right.
Everybody knows where I am.
And I'm gonna zoom in. And I'm gonna screen share.
It's hilarious.
And this is actually not as absurd as Dallas, so I'm gonna use Dallas actually.
Dallas, geez, yeah.
Because they're a lot more of a drivey city.
Dallas. DAO list Dallas. That'd be
horrible.
That'd be a good name of a first blockchain city.
Yep.
Dallas.
Yeah,
I think all the cities in the U.S. Speaking of city-states, all of the city-states in the U.S. should probably have to, if they have any historical city names like Athens or Memphis, they should have to, they maybe have a couple of years to change their name, or else they'll have to adopt the political structure of the ancestor city, right? So you'd have to declare a pharaoh. Anyway, all right. You guys want to go to the next question? We can just do that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
I urge everybody to pull open their their maps and search for bank branches nearby, and then just scan to different cities. There's absolutely no circumstance
Oh.
under which Bitcoin uses more energy.
No, not at all. Or more bricks. Geez. We lost Greg. What party? This is get your popcorn ready. Okay, next question. What party will resist blockchain technology the most in your opinion? So this is an opinion, not a prediction. What do you guys think?
What party?
Yeah, and I was like, there are several parties. Man,
everybody's leaving. Well, I guess it's just
Man,
me and you, Joe.
They got me.
Man, what happened?
They got me. It just dropped for some reason.
We lost Sean too.
Honestly, it's probably my old MacBook. It's more than likely the fact that I opened Maps and it couldn't handle both at the same time. But,
So if you had to guess I'm assuming one of the major American parties, I mean, you could have parties in Europe or something.
Goes to the whole fact, it goes to the whole fact that both parties are the same party, which is the corrupt
dude, the
party.
Purple Empire has one party.
Yeah. That's what I believe.
One party.
Same.
Even the libertarians, I don't know what color they're supposed to be, but I think they're part of the whole.
The Mises Caucus takeover actually is a little promising for them.
That's interesting. I don't trust it, but it's awesome. I saw some of their tweets immediately were pretty based. So,
do you ever watch Dave Smith?
No.
You gotta check him out. Check out his Part of the Problem, because he actually beat Jon Stewart to The Problem, and so he changed it to Part of the Problem. But,
wow.
But you should check out Dave Smith. I recommend it to everybody. If we could ever get him on here. Jeremy Kauffman, who's running for Congress, knows him now because they got on or he got on there to talk about his run for Senate. So we got to get Jeremy and Dave on here sometime. I think that would be good.
That'd be awesome. All right.
We had Jeremy.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so just quick guess. What do you? I mean, so you're both saying Uniparty, and I do agree. It's a weird thing because there are, I think most of the promoters, and I might be totally probably getting this wrong, but I think most of the promoters that are at least honest promoters of trying to get the SEC off the case of a couple of the projects are mostly Republican, because like, I think, some of the worst aren't necessarily that they're Democrats, but they are very, very establishment oriented, like Elizabeth
South
Warren.
Florida Democrats, though, are going to probably be on the team.
Right. Exactly. So it's going to be mixed, but it's, again, that whole party situation is just divide and conquer BS. So
right, yeah, I would say look past party and look to district.
Yeah. And by the way, the thing that worries me most, it's an interesting thing because it does worry me, but it also is just a huge annoyance, is that the whole we need to get ahead of this bullshit from the regulators on all fronts tends to be very pigeonholed. Like, they understand one fucking little piece of this technology and they think they're going to regulate as if that is the whole and complete truth. And it's like, no, that would break entire things that are being built if you treat it that way. And it's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. They're horrible. They're all evil.
Well, have you guys ever seen the graph of public concern and how it influences policy? It rocks back and forth between influencing it one way or the other, but it ultimately normalizes out to zero. Public opinion does not influence policy, right? 90% of the things that our governments do, they don't give a shit what the people think, because the people don't care, right?
Sean sent a great video this morning of a guy, and he's in Austin. I'm not sure what his position is. I didn't recognize him, but he was speaking at a hearing, and Nadler was trying to poke the bear about the Second Amendment, and he was like, let me be clear about that because he's like, oh, so you would use it against the army, and he's like, let me be clear that it's to protect my God-given rights against tyranny. And then he went in to talk about later, he talked about how the Fed, you guys are writing legislation with money that you don't have, that you're printing up to have control over cities, over states, that then the state has to okay, well, we're taking this money from the Fed and now we have to figure out the budget and implement these things on the people because we want this money so bad from the Fed. But the Fed just made up that money.
Right.
It was fake money. So you're forcing things on the people at a state level with fake money.
Right.
And they know because nobody pays attention to the local elections.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately, this is the driver of inflation, because if you don't understand real, actual economics, and when I say that, I mean Austrian economics, because it's the only one that's based on like the fact that you print more money. The classical definition of inflation is more money chasing after fewer goods. How does that happen? Right? That doesn't happen because there are less goods. That happens because we get more money that isn't generated by real production. Right? So inflation is always a result of printed money getting into the system. How does it get into the system? Well, special purpose vehicles, which is the mechanism by which the Treasury extracts funds that the Fed prints.
Yep.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Lisa.
Okay. Next question. Let's see here. From Hodl Signal. And by the way, maybe we can get back to those other current events before we sign off. If Sean comes back. All right. So this question will go real quick. Hodl Signal. What political legacy systems can be replaced with decentralized blockchains? We believe that politicians won't institute blockchain voting systems because they could be voted out of office by them, because they won't have any control. That's an absolute truth. So what decentralized blockchain systems could be implemented to step by step, piece by piece, to undo the current political systems? Reporting comes to mind.
Good question.
Let's say CPI index. That's very brilliant. Unfortunately, politicians, scumbags, won't use accurate reports if it undercuts their power. The lobbyists will pay the politicians not to use certain reports, even if they are accurate and truthful. Big pharma studies are an example. I think it could be something very, very much like, say, a group committed, let's say, of good accountants or something. Potentially passive evil could turn good if they would say, look, we're going to actually institute a real CPI, and it's going to be decentralized reporting. And this is the formula that's going to happen. And maybe a DAO would be required to say, okay, we can change something because now the industrial world changes. Big historical changes could allow them to adjust it, but it would be known on chain, and you wouldn't be able to fiddle with the numbers behind the scenes. Why don't they do that?
I have to say for this one, I think the answer is it's going to have to be imposed from the bottom up, right?
Yeah.
You start at the local level.
Yeah.
You can shove through with the right amount of push wherever you are, anything at the local level. If you organize, like, you can get your neighbors pissed off enough that that they'll piss off their neighbors, and enough neighborhoods, you've got control of your county government. It doesn't take that much. You can see the example of that taking place in New Hampshire with the Free State Project, right? They didn't start by taking over the state legislature. They started by taking over the local districts.
Yep.
And they went from there to the state level, right? So to the extent they didn't just dismantle state structures, which they did to a certain degree, and are in the process of it to a certain degree.
And don't ever discount the killdozer, right? So
right. So yeah, the answer is you can get all of it. You just have to start at the bottom.
Yeah.
I think Greg used the right words: impose, pissed off. I think one of the reasons why we're seeing so much transparency in their evil is because of the stuff that we've been talking about we're talking like 3, 4, 5 years here. The amount of technological leap that with blockchain and crypto that we've seen is like mind blowing to a regular person. And I think that they see what can be changed and how much power can be given to people. And that's why everything is so accelerated now. And things are so transparent. But I think that all is lost. I think that nothing matters. I don't think it matters to put voting on the blockchain. I don't think that it matters to put politicians on the blockchain. I don't think any of that matters anymore because, the classic quote is blockchain doesn't stop corruption. It just makes it easier to see.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. Although you can
now. They don't care about us seeing.
Use it as a tool to stop it.
Until we take back our country and until they're frightened of the people again. It doesn't matter what we can see. I mean, we saw things that didn't add up.
Oh.
And people said, hey, hold on. We'd like to look into this. And the government said, no, we're not going to look into it. And then we had the day after the 5th of the first month of the year happen. And now it's blown up. And that was used to
necessary condition of changing, right?
It was used to put the military on the streets of our capital to protect.
And that's the point. That's the point. If
elected representatives from us,
if they don't put the news reports that sneak out at the time, the pictures, the videos, the reality that sneaks out, they will change it over. They're changing the freaking dictionary words. Mm-hmm. If we can't get a handle and use this technology for history's sake and for our own,
for history's sake, yes,
we're lost. Because that's the thing.
There's a demand on you individually listening to this, right? You can find out what is being manipulated on Wikipedia without there having to be a news story about it. They have a history that you can look at. But how many people here have ever clicked on the revision history and actually seriously used the diff tool? Like, train yourself to use that thing, and all of a sudden that history can matter.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. That still relies on a trust of Wikipedia, because at some point you're gonna see something, and if anybody looks into it, you'll see something that you're like, holy shit, look at this, and it's not going to be there 3 months after when you try to show it to somebody, and they're not going to believe you.
Right, and so people have been trying to corrupt Internet archive.org for some time, and have only succeeded to a moderate degree. It's actually an impressively resilient thing. You give that tool blockchain, and you change the fucking ball game. Right?
And that's what we've tried to talk to them. They so far have not had any interest in it. I think, in fact, we're working on a project. I will tell you, we're working on a project that actually uses the crypto side. Uses the blockchain to archive for real history, but it uses the crypto side to monetize it, so that they don't have to go out and beg people for donations, right? So. Some interesting things there. It should be something that we could go get funding on, but who the hell knows? Because maybe people don't want.
I think what happened to Trump was one of the biggest eye openers to the world, because it's not the elites, it's not a certain group of people, because he was the president. He was one of them, but he's not one of them. You can see that there is an actual group that run things. It's okay for a certain, like a left wing politician to say, hey, you should go and bother those people when they're out for coffee, and you should go and scream at them when they're out for dinner, and that's fine. But if you say that or anything close to that about if you're a conservative, then they'll go after you.
Do you guys want to hear my tinfoil hat theory about the Mar-a-Lago raid?
But well, hold on. But until people won't let it happen. I gave up. I completely gave up on everything when I saw the governor of New York be accused of not harassment. And that's another thing. They kept calling it harassment. He put his hand up under a woman's shirt, under her bra, and grabbed her boob. That's assault. It's not harassment. He said, I did that. I'm wacky. That's done. You're arrested. If it was you, even if it was a famous person like Jordan Peterson did it, he's arrested. If many other people said they were accused of it, and they said, yeah, I did it, I'm sorry. But what happened with him is there was a press conference with 20 or 30 different law enforcement agencies. Like, look at all the power we have. We're not going to use it. And they said, arrest is not off the table. Who, if I did that, would they have a press conference?
Can I tell you that the enabler of that is the current left. I mean, the ones that are programmed, you're never going to get back. But the ones that are not, that aren't, Zoomers, the ones that aren't programmed by the state through school, need to start saying that's bullshit, and realizing that they're more in line with Trump supporters than with what's happening.
I think that's what just happened, guys. I think that's what Mar-a-Lago did. what just happened here is the victim narrative that they've been using to portray everyone as victims that has been dividing the country has now been magically and somehow effectively granted to Donald Trump. He's visibly a victim of this to anybody who looks. Even CNN is admitting it, right? And that's something new. I think they already knew. I mean, they were already criticizing Joe Biden.
And the fact that they're trying to seal the warrant, they're trying to hide even the warrant.
Right.
They held it over 10 feet away from his attorney, tried to get his attorney out of there, told him to turn off the cameras.
Here's something too. I'm going to get into two angles.
Off, man. What were they
I'm going to take
everybody
this
from?
I'm going to take this a little bit out of bounds, possibly. Okay, that there are two things that I saw in the 4chan setup that kind of like blew my mind. All right, the first was that essentially the guy who either issued the warrant or wrote it, I don't know what, he was, however, within the prosecutor's office in Southern Florida when Epstein was let go in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, directly. He had been hired later by Epstein's group, right? So there's a bunch of stuff there's like, holy shit, okay, that's all tied to Epstein. Okay, that's not the out of bounds part. The out of bounds part that I'm wanting to know what you guys think about, and this is the crazy shit, is you know who else was in that office at the time? DeSantis. Like, wait a minute, DeSantis was there when they let Epstein go before, right? And there are a bunch of other questions about DeSantis. Do you trust him? I don't know. If you are wanting change, because you think, I want change. I want McAfee there, right? Or, okay, I'm not going to get McAfee. I want Rand Paul. Okay, I'm not going to get Rand Paul. Okay, I want Trump. Trump's going to change some stuff, right? Now, the other side is
clearly
on Trump. Do you trust him? If you're even me, it's like, do I trust Trump? I don't know. He didn't pardon any of the January 6th stuff. He pardoned some freaking rappers. I was like, oh, I'm going to be cool. I can go to the parties and be cool for these rappers that I pardoned. It's like these rappers that were doing things about it's like, holy shit, what is this guy doing? He didn't pardon Assange. He didn't do the things that he could have done.
Apologist. As you said, DeSantis was there. Well, maybe he didn't know about stuff.
Right. And that's the thing.
The Ukraine blacklist, though? I don't think so.
The only
real rebel is Rand Paul.
People have to start.
Yes, Rand Paul is I think fundamentally
if you go to Fox
constitutional.
News, their YouTube page, or go look at all the stories about, oh, this happened and we found this on the laptop and this could happen and this could happen and this is it. This is damn. If Joe Biden's going to get impeached, it's all BS, man. Yeah. We're talking about all this stuff 30 years ago. It'd be like, oh, look at what has happened. Oh, the police haven't done anything. What are we going to do, guys? That's it, man. And until we get back to that, until people say, hey,
now what are we going to do? Yeah.
It's been a week, and the police, the entities that are supposed to take care of things aren't functioning. What are we going to do?
Right.
That's it. There has to be a hill that you're going to die on, and people can see what has happened with Trump this week. And they're finally asking the question, what's next? And this is the point in history.
They're gonna vote him back in, and then he's not going to release Assange, and he's not going to do any of this stuff. And he's like, I'll do it next time.
I think it's done. And Lisa
made tornado cash the same
Trump
day as the
save you. No one can save. We're done. The only thing that can save the world, not this country, but the world, is us. Is the people. It's over. It's done. Until people stand up, the FBI's done, the CIA's done. It's so messed up that it can't be fixed. It has to be dismantled with a skeleton crew and then rebuilt from the ground up.
Assuming we need anything at that level of power, which I don't think we do.
And people are starting to ask the question, which like I was saying with the Gestapo and the Nazis, it was all, it's okay when they came for them. It's okay when they came for them, but then they came for me. But people are starting to ask the question, well who's next? Wait a minute. This is getting closer.
I'm sorry, but this is the culmination of Alexander Hamilton's Federalist Papers failing as an experiment. And we can't just rebuild the thing. We shouldn't rebuild the thing. This is the world of evidence of the consequences of that action. Right.
Once again, you hit the nerve where people are starting to see things that they haven't always been. Like people think most people, not even some, I'm gonna say most people think that a federal income tax has always been around since the country started.
Yeah.
That's what the T tax
Actually,
was.
it's been around throughout history and failed.
This is all experiment. Fiat money,
3 times,
experiment. Paper
actually,
money,
before.
experiment.
Right.
You know, federal income tax, experiment. All these things are like 100 years old or less.
Right.
They haven't been around that long. And people think it's always been that way and it just has to be accepted.
Right. The wake-up call is people need to remember more than the last 10 years of history.
Exactly. And people are starting to say, who's going to build the roads? Wait, all this stuff happened before we had this. You know,
Our elites are thinking in terms of the last 200 years. Don't never believe otherwise.
Or
if they're using the 18-something whatever Espionage Act to prosecute Assange, then you need to start thinking in terms of what was that for, right?
Our elites are, as always, inbred clowns. So,
right, but they're fucking smart. We shouldn't.
Well, they have a lot of historical smartness. Man. All right. And so someone who is titled "To Hell with You for All Eternity" tells us the Dragon Chain is boring, holding for so much time. It's like, sorry. Anyway, okay. You go to the next question. It's hilarious.
Thanks for watching. But they've been watching for an hour and 20 minutes.
I think Lisa looks beautiful, though. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're sweet. There you go.
Let's see. There's divide and conquer. Okay, let's see here. Kratos, God of Boy, what are some projects doing smart ballot voting? I know there's one group that we talked to that was wanting to plug it in. They're using Audit Trail, where they're basically tracing ballots, but they weren't using chain. So we're hoping that we can get them on chain. There was another group that I spoke to back in 2017. I'm not going to name them because I don't know if they ever released or even announced, but I was telling them way early what was needed. And that was early 2017, I think. I think they were in the Midwest. But
the U.S. Postal Service has a patent for it.
That's right. And West Virginia did do a pilot program, and I think they canceled it, but they did go through a couple of elections with at least either regional or statewide with blockchain.
They did.
I think the thing here to be careful with, everybody, is voting is hard. I've worked personally on implementing just an in-chamber voting system for the Indiana State Legislature, and that was hard as fuck to get right. And even the compromises that we had to make in terms of things like when the vote closes, when do you count a vote getting in on time versus getting in late? Like these little tiny technical implementation details change the outcomes of things if you do them wrong. And getting that right is so hard to do. This technology is so young that there are so many things that we have yet to shake out. I wouldn't trust that any of the experiments we will do first will be the final implementation that actually works.
Isn't it India that has like the most pure voting, where they just stain their thumbs, and like you can't go somewhere else because you've got like your thumb is stained for 24 hours or whatever. And that identifies the individual. And
military does that one. The military will do it when they go into a place like that. That's like, I guess, their simplest way to do it.
Yeah.
It's still, open. There's lots of ways to defraud that. It's still superior to our own, probably, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to go back real quick.
Simplicity is more superior, I guess.
That's the thing, though. Fundamentally, though, they don't want it. So unless you're doing it locally, you're not going to get it. Why is that? Because they cheated on the last election. They cheated on the one before.
It has to be built from the bottom up. It has to be built from the
generations. It has to be from the bottom up. There's no way around it.
I want to see a smart voting system for school board elections. That's what I want to see. I want to see a smart voting system for electing your county treasurer.
Well, I will tell you, depending on if you're in a major city in the U.S., I guarantee to you that the school board elections are fixed too, because those are powerful and there's a ton of money that flows through those in those big cities. I guarantee they're not going to get that.
But if we start with a nationwide project, there will be no accountability at the level there needs to be to iterate to get it right. And that's why it has to start small. It has to start small and local. And
I think
to me
that's
is
the
where
other
I'd like
thing
to see this
too.
context.
I do think that people need to start, figuring out that some of these people in your midst are not good people, and we like to think that everybody's a great person. There are enough bad people out there, and the more we say, oh no, they're okay. The bad people can do a lot of things that overcome a lot of normal people that don't want to do bad things, because they're proactively doing that, whereas we're very passive about it. And so you think about it, to overcome that requires a little bit of discrimination of the people that you are trusting, right? That he's like, okay, I'm not going to trust that dude who doesn't want this voting system. There's a reason for it. They're peeling money away. They're cheating. They're doing whatever they're doing. I don't know.
I think we're at a point now where people are going to need to snap. It's always something small. Look at Floyd. Some drug addict criminal was murdered.
Hey, wait a minute.
No, he was murdered. It was wrong. It happens all the time. Well, who cares? Who cares, man? It happens all the time.
Well, but again,
the last 10 guys the week before, then all of a sudden it snapped and the whole world freaked out. There's people saying "get off my neck" in Ireland. Kids are protesting in school. Just people will talk about back in the colonial days. It's like they're so hardcore. It was the same damn thing. It was like, okay, that's too much. You want to mess with my tea? Right. I'm done.
I mean, and yet, how many years has it been since that happened, right? And we still have fucking qualified immunity.
Exactly.
And nothing has actually
not just qualified
changed.
Immunity, Greg, though. There's certain things that the normies don't know. The fact that a federal agent can admit that they've broken the law and you still can't do anything.
Right, exactly. There's no accountability at all.
Because a police officer can lose that immunity and you can sue them. But
you have the fucking defund the police brigade, the fucking
federal officer can do whatever they want, and you can't
voting for the Capitol Police expansion. Like, what the fuck?
I was watching this
all a show
where this one it was a federal officer. He planted evidence, like the Arby's security cam showed him planting evidence in his new girlfriend's ex-boyfriend's truck. He gets the guy got off, but this agent did that. He's like, yeah, okay, I did it. I planted the evidence so we could arrest him and put him in jail. Nothing. That moment do anything
was such a missed opportunity, because really what happened there was a symphony of the politics of division, because they had natural allies in the libertarian movement who, largely white guys, largely quote cisgendered people, largely like all of those divisions that made it so that the people who already had some modicum of power that could have spoken, they were excluded from and intentionally kind of shoved to the side in a way that was mean-spirited. Only made a case for a system that equally abused everybody. And that's what we're getting. That's what we're getting right now. Instead of equality through improvement, we've got equality through regression. And that seems to be the direction that they wanted things to head at the very top, doesn't it? I don't think that's a coincidence myself. Okay. But I want to go back to another thing, though, because I think this ties back in. When I flip the bird over the boredom comment, boredom is your fucking fault. If you're bored, you're fucking boring. And if you're bored, you're apathetic, and you need to fucking stop it. We're up here doing something. What are you doing?
I was just about to apologize to him. It's like I was just giving him crap. So, no, but that is true. That is true. Anybody who's bored with Dragon Chain needs to go build something. They need to go build something. If you're here for the number go up, then you need to be somewhere else. I will tell you, and I've been saying that for a long time, because it might go up, it might not. What we really need to do is build things, and the number might go up, right? But then that is something that is not controlled by us, right? So,
but that goes back to that
I was given crap, but yeah.
That goes back to the conversation where we were saying if Bitcoin is not number go up, and if it goes to the conversation of it carries free speech, yes, then that's when we're free. That right. But also that's when the money really was created to entrap us.
Joe makes that point all the time, and it doesn't people don't understand. I didn't understand it for a while, but if people wouldn't focus on that, if people, okay, Bitcoin is beanie babies. You know, John Oliver was right when he said it. It was offensive, but a little piece of all of us is like, well, yeah, it kind of is.
But except for beanie babies weren't built to liberate you.
But crypto is a beanie baby. It's basically the community can shoot a price up. Doge
token
Dash.
is a MacGuffin.
I put in.
It always was.
I put in $40,000 into Doge Dash, and I made $1 million in 2 weeks. And then I lost it all because my friends screwed me over. But that's what a community can do. And if we just expanded the community, where hey, this is what Bitcoin can do. Right now, people think this is a beanie baby. I can buy it and it can go up in value, and I could sell it and that's it.
Right.
But imagine if Beanie Baby, imagine if it came out like years ago. Hey, if you buy this Beanie Baby, it can go up in value, but also you don't need to feed your family anymore.
Right, exactly. Ask not what
automatically
Bitcoin
they're full, they get all their nutrients and vitamins,
Bitcoin,
all because you bought this Beanie Baby. The price of Beanie Babies would skyrocket.
Yes.
Because they're
utility.
But dude, I don't have to feed my family anymore.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. What the powers that be, and we need to finish up because I'm almost time, right? The powers that be have effectively taken that utility out. The scarcity is there. They can't kill the scarcity, right? But if they can kill the utility, then it's like it's not going to go up very much. Bitcoin is not going to hit 100,000, let alone 1 million,
right?
Because of the utility, right? And
right,
if you can get them utility, efficient, scaling, and scarcity, then you have something way beyond gold.
Well, that's ultimately what's neat about Tornado Cash, right? They put it on that list, but guess what? You can still fucking access it and use it. It's still running. And ultimately the question is, do people have the courage to go against them?
And everybody needs to run a node or do whatever the thing
is still running.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's all the questions. We ran out of time. We're at 1:32. So let's say, Lisa, what is going on this week?
Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you guys that participated. All of you here donated, including our amazing producer who's not seen but is a part of our show every week, to the charity for Warriors for Freedom, for Team Mighty. And I want to thank all of you guys. We were able to raise over $8,000, and we're going to be holding an online auction this weekend with, we have a couple of 10-ounce silver bars and some John Elway stuff and a Big Swear package and some other stuff that we have available. So that's our big thing, is trying to earn a little bit more money for Warriors for Freedom. They have, they serve vets and prevent suicide for veterans, and do a lot of great work. So we're doing all that to honor my dad, and that's our big stuff. So, and then my show's every weekday, 4 p.m. Central. Come see me, like Quinn Lisa.
Right on. Excellent. Greg.
Okay, so we are in an interesting position right now as a company, as Rivet is not going to be pretending like it is in any way interacting with the Tornado Cash addresses. We are just publishing a list of information that you can access that displays accurately what's on the blockchain. If you choose to interact with things that the government doesn't want you to, that is your choice, and people from other countries are free to do it still. But Rivet will not be participating in the illusion that we are somehow interacting with a specific contract address by not censoring the blockchain. I'm calling on other infrastructure companies to take a similar stand. And if your infrastructure company will not take that stand, I'm urging you to switch to us. And if you're already on Infura, already on Alchemy, leave them behind, because you're a collaborator at this point. Leave them behind. Come to us. Come to any of the other providers that will make a stand here, or run your own nodes. We have open source projects that you can use without even talking to us if you want. But
awesome.
but seriously, fuck censorship and fuck listening to that. This mechanism was not intended for that. It was intended to stop foreign nationals, not censor what software tools U.S. citizens can use. Resist it, please.
Right. Excellent. I love to hear that. And Sean, what's going on?
I got a 2-part interview with Jeff McCabe. Used to be the CEO of Divvy. Now he stepped down. He's just on the board.
I didn't know.
On Lightning Works. It's a brand new NFT comic series that they're putting out. It's really cool. That's the first part interview that's out. The second part comes out today or tomorrow. And that's on Siege Worlds, which is their video game that they're making, which is out. You can play now in beta. It's really, really cool. I had talked to them when they first had the idea like 2 years ago, and it was really neat. And it's nice to see that they have built it all, and it's all coming out. Hopefully, I'm going to interview the co-founder of Cult DAO this week. What else? Check me out. Also, I think people need to, like Greg said, I think are at the point now where it's collaboration. The ATF agent, he resigned 2 years from retirement because he couldn't stand to do all the unconstitutional work. You know, he joined the ATF to make a difference and to make America a safer place and not to trample on people's rights. And he couldn't do it anymore, and he resigned. Wrote a nasty letter. You can check that out. The FBI's list of what constitutes a domestic terrorist, the things on the list are people that talk about the Second Amendment and people that talk about the Constitution. So if you do those things, you can make the list of a domestic terrorist, according to the FBI. Times are like Greg said, if you're part of it, you're not just getting a check anymore, you're collaborating. Either be a mole or publicly leave. Get rid of your badge. If you enforce red flag laws, if you do any of that and you're a cop, you're a collaborator, man. It's okay if you're a good cop and you help the community and you do. If you enforce unconstitutional laws, you're a bad cop. Yep. Just like you're buying.
You took an oath.
Yep.
It's all the same.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for saying that. And Dragon Chain, gosh, we're just I'm finishing up a move myself, and we're trying to get a few things kicked off. Some interesting stuff going on in the development world. I talked about we just released a new version of the core platform that integrates a lot of the blockchain data directly with business data. It just makes it much easier to build a blockchain project. And we already have the first rollout. Den already is running it, and we're going to probably have a couple of new rollouts in the coming weeks as well. And then, gosh, let's see here. We have a couple of very interesting integrations that are in design right now that for people who are running verification nodes, they will have probably some pretty interesting things that will be coming out. We might reach out for some feedback on details in the coming months. Den DAO call is later today. I think it's early today. So if you watch that normally, we had to move it up because of availability. And let's see here. There are some very interesting things there that I'm wanting to propose to the DAO. So I'll probably bring that up. Some things that kind of, once you see how the economy works, we weren't sure when we first laid everything out about a couple of, use cases. And now now that we see how things work, it makes a little more sense. So anyway, try to watch that today. And I think that's it. So, keep watching it and make sure you like, comment, make sure you share this, because the more it gets shared, the more it gets viewed, the more all of everybody who asked the question and all the hosts will get. I think that's it. Also watch for there should be a vote in beginning of next week for September show themes, or subjects, or whatever we call it. So that's it. Thanks a bunch, guys.
Shout out to Dave, man. Enjoy your Iceland.
Dave,
if you're out there.
Iceland. Yes.
Be safe with all the volcanoes.
Yes. Right on. Yeah, watch his stuff on Den. He's posting some pretty cool stuff. So, all right. Bye, guys.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion. on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.